Hey, welcome along to Life Switch Online. It is so good to have you with us today. Man, I hope you have had an incredible week. And man, how cold has it been over these last 2 days, right? Hey, just before we dive into our margin series, can I ask you to do us one favor? As always here on Life Switch Online, please comment below. Let us know that you're watching. Let others know that you're watching because, hey, we know our online community is better when people know they're connected. So please take a quick moment to let us know that you're here with us today. As I said, we are now into part 4 of our margin series, and this series has really been looking at one question: is our attempt to get the most out of life causing us to lose our joy for life? And some of the feedback we've had as we've been talking about the series is, man, that's so true. We are living life at such a hectic pace that this picture describes, right? We're trying to squash so much into our life. And as we try and squash so much into it, we actually realize we don't have the peace, we don't have the joy that we can get from life because we're trying to squeeze so much in. And so the premise of the series has been, hey, that we were created to and we're designed to live with a little bit of margin. And the working definition we've had for margin is this: the space between our current pace and our limits. Margin is that gap between our current pace and our limits. And as we've been going through this series, we've set up this website, lifeswitch.org.nz/margin, and that's really there to help you get some tools that will help you unpack and what we've been talking about in a real practical sense. And today, I'll tell you, we are going to talk about financial margin. And there is more tools than any other week on that link for you based on what we're talking about today to help you find financial margin. So, hey, as we go, and so some stuff strikes a chord and you're thinking, man, I need to find financial margin. Hey, there are some wonderful tools available right there to help you get it. One question as we dive into today, and it's simply this: how much income do I need to find financial peace? That's a question we can ask, right? How much income do I need to find financial peace? How much income do you need in order to find financial peace? I reckon I could guess your answer, and your answer is simply this: more. It's more. It's more than what I'm currently earning. Maybe you're earning $30,000 a year at the moment. You'd say more. Do you know what's interesting? If you talk to someone who's earning $100,000, they'd say more. If you talk to someone who's earning $400,000 a year, they'd most likely still say more, because the way we live, that whatever we've got, if we really want to find financial peace, it's just at the next barrier. It's just that whatever comes next. The answer most people will give: how much money do you need in order to live with a sense of financial peace? They'd say more. And I want to show this just graphically for a moment. If we were to look at our income over time, so we've got money coming up here and you've got time here, what tends to happen as we go through life is we over time start to generally earn more and more money. And I know this isn't always true, and for a lot of people it's up and down, it's all over the place, but what tends to happen as we go forward in life, as we start to get older, as we progress through jobs, as time goes by, our income increases. And what we always think is, if we're down here somewhere, we say, man, if I was here, I'd find financial peace. Or maybe we're here and we think, man, if I was here, then I'd find financial peace. So maybe we're right at the beginning of our career down here. We're like, man, even if I was there, I'd be able to find financial peace. And we always say more. But the problem most of us have as we go through life, if we put our expenses on this graph, is our expenses tend to just track along perfectly with where our income is at. And this is why we never find we have financial peace, because when we're earning this, our expenses are down there. All of a sudden, we're now earning up here. But what happens? Our expenses rise up with our income, so we still feel like, man, this is getting hard. Day to day, I'm not any better than I was back there. Yet if most of us could rewind the clock 10 years and look at the salary we were getting then compared to what we're earning now, you'd be in a place right now where you say, man, if I once got told I was earning as much as I'm earning today, I would have thought I'd be living with financial peace, and yet we're not, because what we tend to do is we always lift our expenses to match our income. Whatever our income is, we just make the assumption that all that money is for our consumption, and we lift our expenses, and we just keep moving our expenses up and up and up in line with our income. In fact, what some of us do is even more dangerous than that, because our income tracks like this, but our expenses track well above it. And all of a sudden, we find we're not just spending our income, but we're actually spending more than we earn, and we're going into debt because we tend to just think that, man, if my income keeps going that way, my expenses, I'm going to get there one day. We start spending before we ever get there, and that creates a whole lot of stress, doesn't it? Maybe you're watching this and you realize that this is a picture of what's going on right now. Maybe you find in your world there's not a lot of joy and there's not a lot of peace. And it's because this is going on and you're spending more than you're bringing in. So there's always financial pressure, and therefore there's always financial stress, and that plays out into every other relationship, doesn't it? It plays out into every other area of your life. Let me suggest a better approach. What happens if our income increases but our expenses, they can increase, but not at the same level? What if we call this gap between our income and our expenses is what we'd call margin? That our income's up here, but our expenses is here. So there's margin. And then as we increase our income, we start earning a lot more. What does happen? And we don't just lift up our expenses, but we increase the margin between our income and our expenses. Think of how free that would allow you to feel. Imagine if your income's up here and your expenses are down here. Don't you think you'd walk through life with a little less stress? That you'd find that there's a lot more peace, that you're then able to enjoy things more, so you're living with a lot more joy, simply because you have built into things this level of financial margin. So if we were to ask that question again, how much income do I need to find financial peace? I'd say that the level of income isn't the answer. What you need to find financial peace is financial margin. Because when you've got margin, you can experience peace, because you know you haven't got another big bill rolling around that you're unable to pay. You see, when you've got financial margin, do you know what that does? That actually turns a crisis into an inconvenience. When you're running on the line financially, or maybe even above the line financially, and then say your car breaks down and you've got to get a whole lot of repairs done to it, or your fridge stops working, or all of a sudden you find that you've got to move out of your rental and move into another, and you've got to pay a whole lot of bond and stuff like that in advance, and all of a sudden it's like, how am I going to pay this when you're running close to the line? You haven't got that money there. But when you've got that financial margin, do you know what? What was a crisis previously, all of a sudden becomes an inconvenience. Yes, it's an inconvenience to get my car fixed. Yes, it's an inconvenience to find a new fridge. Yes, it's an inconvenience to have to move house. Yes, it's an inconvenience to get a new washing machine. But you've got the money there, so it's not just a crisis. It's actually an inconvenience. Dave Ramsey, the author of Total Money Makeover, he says it this way: financial peace isn't the acquisition of stuff. It's learning to live on less than you make. In our language, it's learning to live with margin, so you can give money back and have money to invest. You can't win financially, he's talking about, until you do this. You're never going to experience the peace, you're never going to experience the joy you can experience until you create financial margin in your life. Let me show you this in Proverbs 21:20. It says this: it says, the wise store up choice food and olive oil. The wise, they store up food and olive oil. What are they doing? They are creating margin. They're buying food, they're buying oil, but they're not consuming it all. They're storing it up. They are creating margin. And it says, but fools gulp theirs down. What do fools do? Fools live with no margin. They take the food and they take the oil and they gulp it down. They get rid of it. So what they buy goes. What comes in disappears. But what we see is, what do the wise do? The wise store up. They buy more than they need. So there is margin. Yes, I'm going to eat. Yes, I'm going to use some of the oil, but there's margin. There's leftovers. They're bringing it in and at a greater level than they're consuming. And I'll tell you that's what we see is margin here in Proverbs. And we could say it this way, that financial peace isn't found at a certain income level, rather contentment, or financial peace is found via contentment no matter what your income level. That financial peace isn't found when I finally get to this level of income. No. Financial peace is found via contentment no matter what my income is. And what I want to do is just talk to you quickly about three mistakes we can make when it comes to dealing with our finances, because I think these mistakes are the things that prevent us from living today with financial margin. The first mistake is this, that we have no idea how much our lifestyle costs. That we have no idea. We've never actually looked and tracked where our money's going. We've got no idea how much it costs to fund our current lifestyle. And we don't know where that money goes or what happens. We sort of got an idea of how much comes in because we see that come in right on our weekly paycheck or our monthly paycheck or however it might be. But we've got no idea how much our lifestyle costs, how much it costs us to live the way that we currently do. See, if we're living with margin, this would be our income and that would be our expenses, and you'd see there's a little bit of margin in there, that every time income comes in, there's some margin. Yes, we've got a whole lot of expenses to pay. We've got to pay our mortgage, we've got to pay rent, we've got to pay for food, we've got to pay for vehicles, we've got to pay for internet and power and all of this sort of stuff, but there's this level of margin there. That's what creates a level of financial peace. Maybe over time, as our income increases, what we can do, where our expenses are still there, but now we can live with a little bit more margin. But unfortunately, this is how many of us are living, right? Our income's there, but our expenses are beyond it, and they start to overwhelm us because that's how we live in. But this is what I bet for a lot of people listening to this, you don't know. You don't know which one of these pictures represents your current lifestyle, do you? You can't tell me straight away, hey, yeah, that picture one, that was me. There's a little bit of margin there. Picture two, that's us. There's a whole lot of margin there. No, picture three, that's us. Our expenses are easily outstripping our income. What are you? Do you know? What is your current lifestyle costing you? Can I just play on this a little bit just to show you some of the dangers of debt? This is what debt does. See, when we accumulate debt, and around here we encourage people not to take any consumer debt, because this is what debt does. You've got this income, you've got your expenses for the upcoming period, but you're also carrying yesterday's expenses through debt. You've got that car payment, you've got that credit card payment, you've got that short-term loan payment, and what that's doing is that's taking your margin to simply cover the debt of yesterday's purchases. If you didn't have debt, your expenses would drop down and you'd find you've got margin. Unfortunately, for some people, what's very common in our culture, because of the way things are promoted, is the picture looks more like this. Your income's there, but you've got this debt, you've got this debt, all of those debts, right? I'm paying off a debt, I'm paying off my car, I'm paying off my phone or my technology, I'm paying off my credit card bill, and even though my expense to live is lower than my income because of yesterday's spending, I'm now not just living in line with my income, I'm living beyond my means. And when we realize that there's a level of stress that comes here. You see, what I know that you desire is you want your expenses to be down here and that margin there. But how are you currently living? See, if we're going to turn this mistake around, this is what we need to know. We need to know where our dollars go. We need to spy on our money. We need to get out a last month or 2 months or 3 months even of our bank statements, and we need to track where our dollars are going. You see, you and I, we all live on a percentage of our income, but most of us don't have any idea what that percentage is. Are you living on 100% of your income, 90% of your income, 82% of your income, 104% of your income? Do you know? See, all of us are living on a percentage, so we might as well choose that percentage and be intentional about it so that we can live with margin. And we're never going to be able to know how much our lifestyle costs until we know where our dollars go. We can't change anything, we can't move anything, we can't really make a big difference until we know where our dollars are going. You need to be knowing where your dollars are going, because when you know where your dollars are going, that's when you can actually start to look at things and say, hey, where can I save money? How can I reduce my expenses? And this can be scary, this can be daunting, because especially if you're watching this and you know that there's no margin, and you know that you're running at the line or maybe beyond the line, it can be very, very confronting. But I want to encourage you, don't make the mistake of not knowing how much your current lifestyle is costing you, because you need to know where your dollars go. The second mistake we make is this: we presume on tomorrow's prosperity. What you and I tend to do is we tend to presume that tomorrow I'm going to make money, and most of us presume that tomorrow I'm going to make more money than I am right now. Well, we know that line is somewhat true. As we go through life, our income slowly increases, we get more skilled as we progress through the ranks, that our income, we get better at what we do, our income slowly increases. And so what we do is we just presume on tomorrow's prosperity. And that's why so many of us live like this, right? Because we think, well, I can afford to live beyond my income now because soon my income's going to be up here, and as long as my expenses stay there, I'm going to be okay. But the problem is this: as our income increases, what we don't do is level off our expenses. What we do as our income increases, we tend to just continuously match that with more and more and more expenses. It's true. It's true. And whether you're up here earning a lot of money, whether you're down here and you're not earning much money, you're living beyond your means. And that creates stress. And I'll tell you, well, it creates just as much stress for someone up here as it does for someone who's down here. And this is why. If you're down here, you look at someone who's up here and you think, man, it must be easy because they could cut their expenses from here to here and still be living with more than what I do. They can't be stressed about it at all. But I'll tell you what, the person up here is I'd suggest, more than stressed than someone down there. And the reason for it is this: if you're down here, you're probably working on a job where you're getting minimum wage or just a little bit more. If you lost your job, the chances are a lot higher that you can find another job that pays that much again in a fairly short period of time. But if you're up here, if you're earning, say, $250,000 a year, do you know how much harder it is to find another job where you're earning $250,000 a year? Those jobs are small and far between. Or you're running your own business and you're having a few years of good returns, and you think that tomorrow you're going to be even more prosperous, so you're living like this, but all of a sudden the economy takes a downturn or something like this goes on, business, top competitors turn up in town, and all of a sudden it's a lot harder for you to get that same level of income again. I want you to understand, no matter where you are on this, if your expenses are above your income, you're living with a sense of stress. And I'd suggest the higher you come up on the income on this, the greater that level of stress truly is. So what can we do? What can we do to help us not presume on tomorrow's prosperity? This is what we need to do. We need to take steps today to safeguard our tomorrow. We need to do something today that's going to safeguard us for tomorrow. We can't prepare for every eventuality, but we can take proactive steps to make tomorrow easier. We can't foresee everything that's going to be happening, but what we can do is we can take steps today that's going to make tomorrow easier. When we're living with margin today, that means we're able to take some of our money and save it and invest it. And that means what happens tomorrow, I've still got this little nest egg over here. And that might start off really, really small and hopefully grow over time. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to be fine forever and a day, because we don't know what's going to predict, or we can't predict what's going to happen tomorrow, how long that period of time is going to last. But I'll tell you what, if we can live with financial margin today, we're going to ensure there's something there for when that rainy day does come tomorrow. And then the third mistake we make is we believe our standard of living equates to our quality of life. Just let me say that again. Let me let this sink in. It takes a while to comprehend this, but this is a great statement. We believe that our standard of living equates to our quality of life. Let me say it this way. We believe that our standard of living equals our quality of life. If our standard of living increases, then our quality of life increases. If our standard of living decreases, then so does our quality of life. This is because this is what marketers do. Marketers say, buy this product, get this thing, have that vacation, do this, buy this. This is going to increase your standard of living, and therefore it's going to give you a better life. But can I suggest that our standard of living and our quality of life do not correlate like this? We believe this, but we're wrong. And the truth is, I'm pretty sure that you know this intuitively. And this is why. Because many of you are living with a higher standard of living today than you've ever lived with previously in your life. Yet the quality of your life today, the sense of joy that's there, the sense of peace there, isn't as high as it has been in the past. In fact, you might remember at times when you had a much lower standard of living than you have right now. You lived in a smaller house, right? With not such a big wardrobe, with not so many toys, with not quite the same cars that you've got today. But your quality of life was actually better. That you just kind of know this to be true. And I'll show you it another way. This is what debt does. Well, what debt does to you, what debt does to me, it can lift our standard of living. If I go into debt to buy that car, if I go into debt to buy all of that stuff to make my home a lot nicer, if I go into debt to have that holiday, if I go into debt to just purchase this and to buy nicer quality food and all this sort of stuff, my standard of living is going up. But the quality of my life is shrinking because all of a sudden I have got this extra financial stress that's making me not even able to enjoy the very things that I've brought. You see what debt does is it can lift our standard of living, but it can also crush our quality of life. Do you know what margin does? What margin might do is it might actually lower your standard of living. If you're running close to that line, or if you're running above that line and you want to find financial margin, do you know what you're going to have to do? Spend less. And the way you're going to move that line down is by spending less. So what does that mean? It means that your standard of living is going to take a little bit of a hit. You might not be able to live in that neighborhood. You might not be able to drive that car. You might not be able to wear those clothes. You might not be able to have so much stuff. You might not be able to go on all of those trips that you so love to go on. Your standard of living might come down. But do you know what will happen when your standard of living comes down? Your quality of life will shoot up. Why? Because there's a level of financial peace that comes with living in financial margin. All of a sudden, because there's now margin, you'll be able to enjoy what you've got in a whole new way, because you're not going to have the stress, this thing that's taking your focus off what really matters most. When we bring margin into our life, yes, our standard of living might take a little hit, or maybe in some cases a big hit. But what does it do? It increases dramatically our quality of life. So what do we need to do? We need to prioritize our quality of life, not our standard of living. What you and I need to do is we need to say, what's more important to me, my standard of living or the quality of my life? A lot of us default to our standard of living. But what we need to do is say, no, I'm going to prioritize the quality of life that I live. I'm not going to prioritize my standard of living. And this is hard because other people see our standard of living, but they don't necessarily see the quality of our life. And the reason we like to spend more, the reason we like to do more is because we like other people looking at us going, man, they've got a high standard of living. Look at where they live. Look at what they do. Man, they are successful. He's successful. Man, she's got it together. Look at that standard of living. But what they can't see is the quality of life. And so a lot of us prefer to spend our money to get this standard of living up because that looks good to people out there. But I'll tell you what, a lot of us spend a lot of money that we don't have on things we don't need to impress people we don't even like, right? So we've got to focus on, we've got to prioritize our quality of life, not our standard of living. And like I've said here, until we explicitly understand that our standard of living does not equate with our quality of life, we will continuously forego margin, and consequently our quality of life will suffer. We've got to prioritize our quality of life, not our standard of living when it comes to our financial decision making. So, how much income do I need to find in order to have financial peace? We'd say, well, it's not an income level, it's financial margin. If you're earning very little and you can create financial margin, you'll have a level of financial peace. If you're earning a lot and you've got financial margin, you will find that you have financial peace. It's not about the number, it's about putting margin into the equation. That's what is key. So we might then say, well, what is the key to you and I creating financial margin? I'm glad you asked. I'll take you to one quick passage where we see the answer to this in a letter that a man called Paul wrote to his young protege called Timothy. This is how this little passage starts out. He says, godliness with contentment is great gain. He says when you can couple godliness with contentment, it's not just gain, it is great gain. He doesn't just say, man, godliness is gain. He says godliness coupled with contentment is great gain. And then he helps us unpack this. He says, for we brought nothing into the world and we take nothing out of it. He just reminds us, you know that he's talking about our stuff here. He's saying, look, when you came into this world, you came with nothing. And when you leave this world, you're going to leave with nothing. You brought nothing in and you can take nothing with you. But if we have food and clothing, we will be content with that. There's something about this contentment, right? Because what stops us spending more, buying more, going after the latest, this, going into debt to achieve that? I'll tell you what does this. Contentment that helps us hold back. But Paul doesn't just finish there. He doesn't just paint this beautiful picture of contentment coupled with godliness as great gain. He says, those who want to get rich, look at what he says, fall into temptation and a trap and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. Those who want to get rich, or maybe we could say those who want to appear rich, they fall into a temptation and a trap and into many foolish and harmful desires. That's why our expenses start to look like this. Why? Because we want to get rich, we want to look rich. So I'm going to start spending more than I have. My desires are going to overwhelm me, and I'm going to spend that which I do not have on something that I do not need. And all of a sudden, that is going to sidetrack me. That's going to take me away from what I'm here for. And he continues, for the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Some people, eager for money, have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. Come on, how many of us have pierced ourselves with grief? How many of us have lost that peace, have lost that joy that we could have because we've chased after stuff, being eager for money or the things that money can buy, have deviated us away from what matters most. And we've pierced ourselves with these griefs of missing out on the joy, on missing out on the peace that we could have had. See, listen. What we've been talking about today, creating financial margin. If you're watching this and you're not a follower of Jesus, hopefully this has been somewhat motivational. Hopefully you've looked at this and go, man, there is some real wisdom there. Maybe you've looked at this and gone, man, I'm going to get my financial books in order because I do know these principles to be true. And that's cool. But hey, listen. If you're a follower of Jesus, if you're a Christian and you're listening to this, can I suggest you don't quite have the option here? This shouldn't just be motivational or inspiring to you. This is actually at the core and at the center of your faith, because what Paul is saying to Timothy here is man, when you're chasing after all of this stuff, if you're wanting to appear rich, if you're wanting to look rich, you're not coupling godliness with contentment, but you're coupling godliness with discontentment. And that discontentment is going to have you eager for more, and that's going to make you wander from the faith or as he said back here, you're going to fall into a trap and you're going to chase after many foolish and harmful desires. And do you know what that's going to do? That means your expenses are going to be above your income, and that means that's going to take you away from what God wants you to do. Because Jesus died so that you could be free. And when you're living trapped by that stuff, you're not living free. You're binding yourself back up after Jesus already paid the price for those chains to be broken. See, we've got to understand that if we're a follower of Christ, this is so important, that we can't follow him properly unless we really get this area of our life right. Until we can live with financial margin, it is very, very hard for you or me to say that I am following Jesus properly the way that he wants me to follow him, because I'm not, because I've been sidetracked by the promises of and the pleasures of this world and what they entail, rather than being content with living below my income. So what's the key to creating financial margin? That's it. It's contentment. It's contentment. If I'm living like this, there's my income, my expenses are up here because of this debt, this debt, this debt. Oh, I'm not content. I'm not content with what I've got. I'm trying to get more. And I'm living full of stress. And I can't follow Jesus the way that he's called me to, in the way that I want to follow him. When I can live like this, and I've got this income, and I've got these level of expenses still, but man, there's financial margin there. All of a sudden, I can follow him the way that he wants me to follow him. A couple of examples. Well, what are the most important things we're called to do as Christians? We're called to love one another. We're called to serve one another, encourage one another, to build up one another, to support one another, to take care of one another. All of the one another's, right? Do you know what happens when I've got no financial margin? It's very, very hard for me to one another someone else, because all my focus is on me and what I need to do to keep things moving forward, to keep things ticking over. Why? Because there's no margin there, and I'm so stressed all the time. I can't help you. I can't look out for you. I struggle to build you up because that margin's not there. I'm so stressed because of financial things. But when there's financial margin, look, I can one another you a whole lot better when I've got financial margin in my life, because I'm not stressed about it. I'm not worried about it. I've even got some finances that can help me support you because I've built financial margin into my life. See, and another reason why it's important, what if God calls you to do something? What if God calls you to go in this direction? God calls you to go over here. Well, what if your work's trying to send you over there and God's actually calling you to stay because your family's flourishing where it is right now, but you've got no financial margin? It's easy to go over there because that's where you're going to get paid more, right? But when you've got margin, you're actually empowered to say yes to what it is God's calling you to do. If God says, man, I want you to step out of your career, I'm going to take you on this 1 year journey, and I want you to go and support this work that I'm doing over and in the slums of India. When you've got financial margin, do you know what you can do? You can go and do that. When you've got no financial margin, you're like, oh God, I'd love to, but yeah, there's no financial margin. How am I going to keep paying off these debts? How am I going to keep this stuff going? Because you haven't been living with financial margin. Look, when you live with financial margin, not only have you got space to one another the way that you're supposed to one another others, you've actually got a base. So when God calls you to do something, or to maybe walk away from potential income, you can do it because you've built margin into your life. So to wrap this all up, let me say it this way. What we need to do, what you need to do, what I need to do, we need to trust God and not money. See, the reason we don't live with the sense of contentment is because we don't trust God, we trust our money. We don't trust that God can provide for us. No. We trust that our money is going to provide for us. But this is what money does. Money promises the very things only God can offer. Money promises us peace. If you just have more money, you're going to have peace. But what we know is as our income goes up, our expenses go with it, and we never find that peace. It continues to elude us. Money promises peace. What else does money promise? Money promises security, right? If you've got enough money, you're going to have a sense of security. But this is what else is true, right? Money doesn't guarantee you security. What's worth a whole lot of money today might be worth very little tomorrow. Your money could all go missing. Your money doesn't guarantee that you're going to live an extra day. Your money doesn't offer you security. What can offer you security? Only God can do that. What else have we got? Joy. You think, man, if I've just got more money, I'm going to have more joy because I'm going to have more stuff, and that's going to enable me to have more experiences. But the reality is experiences and stuff aren't things that bring us the most joy. It's the health of we talked about this, relationships, right? And if my mind's so occupied because I've got to earn the money to look after the stuff and to pay for the experiences, man, those relationships are going to get fractured, maybe even broken. I'm going to miss out on joy. You see, what money does is it promises us the things that only God can actually provide for us. So I can't talk about money without showing you this one thing. This is what we talk about around here when it comes to money. This is how you want to think about your money. I've got this level of income, so what am I going to do? I'm going to give, invest, and live on the rest. What am I going to do with my income? I'm going to give, invest, live on the rest. Why? Because there's my margin. When I've got margin, I can give to those in need. I can give to things that I care about. I can give to organizations that I'm passionate about. When I've got financial margin, I can first give, I can then invest, and then I'll live on the rest. I'm going to give, I'm going to invest, and I'm going to live on the rest. I'm going to give because I want to see other people flourish. I'm going to invest so that I'm better tomorrow than I am today because I want to be building something that's going to actually over time increase my level of income. And then I'm going to live content, and that's going to enable me to then live on the rest. That is how we find financial margin. That is what God wants for you. That's what I want for you, and I'll tell you, you can do this. I don't know what's going on in your financial world right now, but I know that you can live with financial margin if you so choose. I'm not saying that it's going to be easy, but I'm saying you can do it. All those resources are on that webpage. Check it out. But before you go, let me pray for you. Heavenly Father, I thank you for every single person watching. Lord God, I pray that you can help them to find this level of contentment that you promise us. Father, I know that we'll never be content until we truly trust in you, because our money does promise us so much. It promises us peace. It promises us joy. It promises us security. It promises us a future. But Father, you are the only one who really can deliver on those promises. And so, Father, I pray for all of us that you help us to trust in you and not in our money. I pray you help us to see our money as a tool, as something to leverage, so that, man, we can make the most of our time here on earth, not just to benefit ourselves, but also those that are around us. And Father, I pray that you can help us all to see the advertising and the marketing and all of that stuff for what it really is. Often just empty promises that bring a little bit of a short-term peak in happiness, but can often cause a long-term level of stress that erodes from our quality of life. So Father, I pray that every single person here will see an increase in their quality of life. And if that means we have to reduce our standard of living to get it, so be it. Help us to reduce that standard of living so that we can experience the life that you died for us to experience. I pray this in Jesus' name. Everybody said, amen, amen, amen. Hey, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you back here next week as we wrap up our margin series. See ya.